In 1951, a psychologist gathered a group of people, showed them 3 lines on a card, and asked a question so simple a child could answer it correctly. And yet, over a third of the time, people gave an answer they knew was wrong. Not because they couldn't see the lines correctly, because everyone else in the room had already said the wrong answer first, and something ancient inside them decided that being wrong with the group felt safer than being right alone. Here is the truth psychology has quietly confirmed again and again. Your brain would rather agree with a lie than risk standing out with the truth. If you've ever softened an opinion in a meeting, laughed at a joke you didn't find funny, or stayed quiet about something you truly believed, just to avoid being the only one who thought differently, you already know exactly what this feels like from the inside. Stay with me. Because the fear of being different isn't a personal flaw. It's one of the oldest, most deeply wired instincts the human mind has ever built. And understanding it might be the thing that finally lets you stop shrinking to fit into rooms that were never quite the right size for you. The hidden problem in it as we like to imagine ourselves as independent thinkers, people who would stand firm even if the whole room disagreed. But the uncomfortable truth is that most of us have already, quietly, agreed to things we didn't believe, simply to avoid the specific physical discomfort of being the odd one out. Think about the last time you held back an opinion in a group chat because everyone else seemed to feel differently. Think about the last time you changed how you dressed, spoke, or behaved just slightly to blend into a new environment. That wasn't dishonesty. That was your nervous system, quietly protecting you from a danger it still believes is life-threatening, exclusion from the group. Because for most of human history, it was. The psychology behind ITIs to understand exactly what's happening beneath this fear. In 1951, psychologist Solomon Asch ran what would become one of the most famous experiments in social psychology. He placed a single real participant into a room with several actors, all instructed to give the same obviously wrong answer to a simple line-matching task. Alone, people got the answer right more than 99% of the time. But surrounded by a unanimous group giving the wrong answer, participants conformed to that wrong answer on nearly a third of all trials, and a striking 75% conformed at least once. When Asch interviewed them afterward, many admitted they knew the answer was wrong. They said it anyway, simply to avoid standing out. Why would a rational mind choose comfort over accuracy? Psychologists Roy Baumeister and Mark Leary offer a compelling answer in their influential 1995 research on what they called the need to belong, the idea that humans possess a fundamental, powerful drive to form and maintain stable social bonds, one so deeply wired that its absence produces measurable harm to health, mood, and cognition. Belonging isn't a preference. It's closer to a biological requirement, as essential to the nervous system as food or safety. Now bring in the neuroscience. Researchers Naomi Eisenberger, Matthew Lieberman, and Kipling Williams designed an experiment called Cyberball, a simple, virtual ball-tossing game where participants were gradually excluded by other players. Brain scans revealed that being excluded activated the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the very same brain region activated by physical pain. Being left out doesn't just feel bad, metaphorically. Your brain registers it, quite literally, as an injury. Put these 3 findings together, and the picture becomes clear. Being different from the group isn't just socially uncomfortable. It activates the same ancient alarm system that once meant expulsion from the tribe. And, for most of human history, expulsion from the tribe meant death. Let's understand it from real-life examples. Picture a workplace meeting. A junior employee, Zara, disagrees with a decision the whole team seems to support. She has real, well-reasoned concerns. But as the meeting goes on and everyone nods along, she quietly decides to stay silent, telling herself it isn't worth the conflict, even though, walking out, she can't shake the feeling that she just agreed to something she doesn't believe. Picture a group of old friends who have known each other since school. One of them begins to genuinely change, new beliefs, new interests, a different way of living. Instead of feeling supported, the group grows subtly distant, and the friend feels the silent pressure to shrink back into who they used to be, just to keep the friendship intact. Picture a family dinner where one sibling holds a different political or religious view than the rest of the family. Rather than voice it, they learn over years to simply change the subject, smile, and nod, trading authenticity for peace at the table. Picture a teenager in a new school, quickly noticing which opinions, clothes, and interests are considered acceptable and adjusting almost instantly, not from dishonesty, but from a nervous system running ancient software that says survival depends on fitting in. Picture a child at home, praised only when their preferences match their parents' expectations, and gently corrected whenever their individuality shows through, until they learn, early, that being themselves comes with a cost most people aren't willing to pay. Every one of these people isn't weak-willed. They are running the same evolutionary program that helped humans survive for hundreds of thousands of years, a program that hasn't yet learned the difference between a modern disagreement and a life-threatening exile. The hidden sign, sign 1. Silent agreement, nodding along or verbally agreeing with a group. Opinion you privately disagree with. The discomfort of visibly standing apart from a unanimous group activates a stronger psychological response than the discomfort of privately disagreeing with yourself. Asch's conformity experiments found that people conformed to a group's clearly incorrect judgment on nearly a third of trials, even when the correct answer was completely obvious. Zara, quietly deciding to stay silent in the meeting despite her real reservations. Genuine perspectives slowly go unspoken often enough that a person can lose touch with what they actually think, simply from a lifetime of prioritizing agreement over authenticity. Sign 2. Shrinking to preserve. Belonging, suppressing personal growth, new beliefs, or evolving interests to avoid feeling different from a long-standing group. Since belonging functions as a core psychological need, the fear of losing that belonging can outweigh the desire for authentic self-expression. Baumeister and Leary's research found that threats to belonging produce significant emotional distress, and that humans will readily sacrifice other goals to maintain existing social bonds. The friend who quietly shrinks back into an old version of themselves just to preserve a friendship group that no longer reflects who they've become. Growth gets quietly traded for comfort, and over time, the cost of staying the same becomes indistinguishable from the cost of losing yourself entirely. Sign 3. Avoiding topics that reveal difference, deliberately. Steering conversations away from subjects where your views clearly diverge from the group's. Avoidance functions as a protective strategy against the anticipated pain of visible exclusion, even before that exclusion has actually happened. Neuroimaging. Research using the cyberball paradigm found that social exclusion activates the same brain region involved in processing physical pain, meaning the anticipation of that pain can be motivating enough to shape behavior well in advance. The sibling who learned, over years of family dinners, to simply change the subject rather than reveal a differing viewpoint. Real connection gets replaced with a polished performance of togetherness, technically peaceful, but quietly, deeply lonely. Sign 4. Rapid social camouflage, quickly adjusting speech, opinions, or presentation to match a new social environment. This reflects an evolved, rapid response system for detecting and matching in-group norms, a survival strategy that once determined whether a person would be protected or expelled by their tribe. Baumeister and Leary's belongingness. Research found that humans form social attachments remarkably quickly under most conditions, suggesting the drive to fit into a new group activates almost immediately upon entering it. The teenager adjusting clothing, slang, and interests within days of starting a new school. Identity becomes fluid in an unhealthy way, shaped more by the room a person is standing in than by anything stable inside them. Sign 5. The cost of early conditional acceptance struggling. As an adult, to express authentic opinions or preferences, tracing back to a childhood where individuality was met with correction rather than acceptance, early experiences of conditional belonging, being loved or approved, of only when conforming to expectations can establish long-term patterns of self-suppression that persist well into adulthood. Belongingness, research consistently finds that the need to belong is not just social but foundational to psychological well-being, meaning early threats to that need can shape behavior patterns for years afterward. The adult who still struggles to voice a genuine opinion at family gatherings, having learned decades earlier that individuality came at the cost of approval. A person can spend a lifetime performing an edited version of themselves, never quite certain which parts are truly their own and which were built simply to be accepted. Notice the thread running through every single sign. None of this is weakness, and none of it is dishonesty. It is one of the oldest survival mechanisms the human mind has ever built, a system that once meant the difference between life and death, still running faithfully in a world of meetings, group chats, and family dinners where the actual stakes are almost never as high as the alarm makes them feel. If you feel a quiet ache reading this, remembering an opinion you swallowed, a version of yourself you shrank to fit somewhere, or a truth you've never quite said out loud, that ache is not proof you are fragile. It is proof you are human, carrying an instinct built for tribes and campfires, now trying to survive in boardrooms and dinner tables. Here is what almost no one tells you. The fear of being different is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that your nervous system is doing exactly what evolution built it to do, protecting you from a danger that, for most of human history, was very real. This isn't a flaw to overcome through sheer willpower. It's a deeply human pattern that can be gently, gradually recalibrated with awareness and practice. Psychology doesn't ask you to stop caring about belonging. That need is real, and it deserves respect. It asks you to build enough internal steadiness that your authentic voice can exist alongside your need for connection, rather than being sacrificed to it every single time the two seem to conflict. Practical solutions. Practice small, low-stakes disagreement. Choose a minor moment, a restaurant choice, a casual opinion, and voice a genuine difference of view even briefly. Since the fear of standing out often feels larger in imagination than in reality, small repeated exposure gradually recalibrates the nervous system's threat response. Separate the discomfort from the danger. When you notice the urge to silently conform, pause and name it. This is social discomfort, not real danger. This simple distinction, informed by the science of social pain, helps interrupt an automatic response that was built for a very different kind of threat. Seek out one dissenting voice before conforming. Research on conformity has found that even a single other person voicing disagreement dramatically reduces the pressure to conform. In group settings, actively seek out or become that first dissenting voice. It changes the entire social dynamic for everyone in the room, not just you. Build belonging in multiple places, not just one. Since the need to belong is a core psychological driver, diversify where that need gets met. Different friend groups, communities, or spaces, so that authenticity in any one relationship doesn't feel like risking your only source of connection. Reframe difference as information, not danger. When you notice yourself being the only one who feels or thinks a certain way, try treating that difference with curiosity rather than alarm. What does my different perspective actually see that others might be missing? This shifts the nervous system's framing from threat to value. Maybe you were never actually afraid of being different. Maybe you were only ever afraid of being alone. And somewhere along the way, different and alone became, in your mind, the very same word. But here is the quiet truth underneath all of this. The parts of you that feel most unlike everyone else in the room are very often the exact parts of you the world still needs to see. Every idea that ever changed anything began as one person's answer that didn't match the rest of the room. Think of yourself not as a single line trying to match a group's incorrect answer, but as your own true length, quietly, patiently waiting for the courage to be measured honestly, even while everyone else in the room says otherwise. You were never meant to disappear into the crowd. You were only ever meant to find the version of belonging that didn't require you to. If this video described a truth you've quietly swallowed to avoid standing out, you're not alone in this. Comment the word different if this felt like your story today. If this helped you understand yourself, or someone you love, a little more gently, share it with someone still shrinking to fit a room that was never the right size for them. And if you want more psychology that helps you understand the ancient instincts still shaping your modern life, subscribe. The next video might help you finally trust your own true length. You don't need everyone's agreement to be right. You only need your own.